Howdy, everybody. Welcome to today's webinar. Today, we're talking about decision-making under pressure, what top leaders do differently. I'm Beth Spriggs, HFA COO, and I'll be your host for this exciting and insightful session presented by the Home Furnishings Association. So today's environment, decisions often have to be made quickly with limited information and high stakes. So over the next hour, we'll explore how to approach tough decisions, tools and mindsets you need, and how to avoid pitfalls. So we'd love for this to be a highly interactive session. We encourage you to post questions throughout the conversation using the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. We will get to as many of your questions as we can. But before we get started, just a few quick housekeeping notes. This webinar is recorded and will be available on demand at myhfa.org/webinar. Again, if you have questions, please use that Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. And I want to give a shout out to Synchrony, thank them as our education thought leadership sponsor for their dedication to the industry and support of these webinars. So now let's meet our panelists. First, we are joined by Christian Nichols, founder of OneGen Solutions. Christian has over 30 years of experience helping leaders navigate generational differences, build strong organizational cultures, and retain top talent. He's also the creator, I was going to say curator, maybe that's the same, the creator of Generational Acuity Framework, a tool that's helping leaders make smarter, more human-centered decisions in today's workplace. Welcome, Christian. Happy to
Thanks for
have
having
you.
me.
Next, we have Peter Theron, president of Boston Interiors, one of the top 100 furniture retailers in the US. With 7 stores across New England and a stellar reputation for design expertise, Peter brings decades of experience in retail leadership, brand strategy, and omni-channel growth. Welcome, Peter.
Thank you.
Last, but certainly not least, we have Renee Johnston, founder of Employee Engagement Solutions. Renee is a powerhouse in organizational leadership and culture building. Her work focuses on strengthening leadership and team engagement to boost retention and performance. It's great to have you with us, Renee.
Happy to be here.
So we've got a lot of topics to cover. I'm going to jump right in, and we're going to start with focusing on traits that great decision makers have. So it's just an open question for anyone who wants to jump in and kick us off. What core traits have you seen in people who make great decisions under pressure?
One of the things I see in our industry very specifically is that they automatically anticipate upstream and downstream consequences of their decision. I mean, an easy example, you might have said a few years ago, motion furniture is a very fast growing part of our business. We should get into that business. But you might try to make that decision just based on a sales forecast. That can work, but are you anticipating increased service needs because it's a mechanical product? Are you anticipating training needs? Are you anticipating reticence for salespeople in a new category? I mean, a more comprehensive look at the decision, not we could sell millions of dollars worth of these. This is a no-brainer. Well, yeah, great decision makers think of it more broadly and more deeply.
Love that, anticipating for sure.
Yeah, I found whether it's the furniture sector or other sectors, top decision makers typically take culture over commission.
Mm-hmm.
What I mean by that is who we are and why we do what we do. And they make decisions, really, they use the word no in a way that is very powerful for decision making and being able to stay the steady course with clarity and say, this is not who we are. Could we make a buck? Yeah, maybe. But this is who we are. And people are going to appreciate the fact that we continue to be true to our values or our culture. And I just see that time and time again in really high performing, long haul leadership.
No, I would agree with both of you. And to kind of piggyback on Christian's comment about culture, I think one of the aspects that is really critical as a core trait is the value that you place on building a culture that encourages buy-in and where people feel comfortable speaking up and even comfortable making a mistake when exploring something new. And when that cultural foundation is set, then as leaders, we have resources and support systems in place to help us make better decisions.
Love that.
The cultural
Um,
foundation oftentimes breeds a trust level, and people are more forthcoming and they're more willing to share concerns. There's less defensiveness. There's just open conversation that creates the best possible basis for making a good decision.
yeah,
And I would say that failure isn't final. And so I've seen a lot of really great decision makers who've made some really boneheaded decisions. Um, but they just took the consequences. They learned from it. They were honest about it, open about it. And so sometimes not making a decision is a terrible decision. And even if you make a bad one, at least you made one and you owned it and then you moved forward. So, and again, that's just kind of principle of the path stuff.
right. Or as I say, sometimes indecision is a decision.
Yeah, most certainly.
Yeah. I'll add one of my own in here. In what I've seen in great decisions under pressure, which is people who are stress dampeners.
Mm.
So I feel like you can either be a stress amplifier or a stress
Mm,
dampener. And
mhm.
I've seen the great leaders come in and they're the stress dampener and they help lower the stress of the people around them in the decisions that are being made.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I
Yeah,
would agree.
the leaders make simple making more simple. That they have an intuitive ability to kind of pair off the things that don't need to be part of the conversation and get the conversation and the focus on the most simple two decisions we're trying to make while we're here.
Mhm.
Um, it's an ability to turn hopeless complexity into the most simple decision that's available to you in that particular case. And it's an important trait in a leader because people who are less developed will do the opposite. They will make it hopelessly complex, not because they're not good at what they do, they just haven't developed that skill yet. So the leader needs to um, balance that tendency in everybody else. And then once you've framed it that way, you've got experts in the room. They will drive you towards the best decision you can make.
Yeah.
I'd like to build on that, Peter. I think one of the basic core traits that I think is really key to successful decision making is the self-awareness piece, right? Knowing what you don't know, knowing where your strengths lie, knowing if you have a tendency to overcomplicate something, and so that you're, in a position to either check yourself or involve folks in the process that will check that for you,
Yeah.
or both.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, for sure. I learned a long time ago that I need to have people way smarter than me in the room. And when you can
mhm.
have, if you're comfortable in your skin and like you said, self-awareness, if you know who you are, it's really simple then to bring other people in and go, okay, what am I not seeing? What am I seeing? What have you seen me do in this situation before? Should I do that again? So yeah, I think having other people is really important when it comes to high level decision making. But it has to be the right people. Obviously, you got to have the right people around you.
Yeah, absolutely. So Renee and Christian, you've both worked with a wide range of retail organizations. And in that experience, what are some of the more common decision-making traps leaders fall into when the stress is high and that pressure is on? And then do you have any tips on how that can be avoided?
Renee?
Sure. The one that immediately came to mind for me was the falling back on let's do it the way we've always done it, and that's the beginning and end of the decision-making process. Well, this is what we've done in the past. Let's do it again, which sometimes might actually be the right decision, but it shouldn't be the only one on the table. And so falling into that trap of just defaulting to what you've always done. And then I think what's particularly interesting in the home furnishings industry is we have a lot of family-owned businesses, right? So the dynamic of challenging maybe the status quo bias can get tricky when you're also factoring in, in many cases, family dynamics, not just organizational dynamics.
Yeah, that's it. I love that. Because a lot of the furniture retailers are family-owned businesses that there's a multiple generations present, which is kind of my wheelhouse in all this anyway, is studying that and understanding that. And I think one of the traps that I have seen over and over again, building off of we've always done it this way, is that this has always worked. It's kind of a different side of that same coin where, I mean, we're doing okay. We've been in the business for 50 years or whatever. And why do things any differently? And why? Well, again, going back to what we said earlier about decision making and having people in the room, I find it wildly wildly perplexing why you wouldn't listen to your son or your daughter who's third generation who says mom, dad, or dad, granddad, like my generation's not buying furniture this way or for this reason or for whatever. They don't read the newspaper. We don't care about your, end all be all, whatever holiday weekend sale this is. We care about, is it sustainable? We care about, is it going to help our community? Do we care about, so they have these different values. And I think it's a huge trap to just trust that because you've been successful in the past, that you're going to continue to be into the future without change. And again, that's where good decision making comes in, to bring people around you that kind of push the status quo and say, hey, listen, we need to make a better decision moving forward about this. Yeah, so that's what I have found to be, especially in multi-generation retailers.
Yeah, you'd think we'd rehearsed that.
I've done it a lot. Yeah.
No, it's great. It's great. The other trap I see folks falling into is just, and Beth, you kind of touched on this earlier in comments, just the analysis paralysis or procrastination, either over analyzing and making no decision or just putting off the decision making process altogether, which, as we all know, can be incredibly detrimental if we're looking at a window of opportunity being attached to the decision making process.
Yeah, that's right. I had a manager tell me once, and I'll never forget this experience. It just really stuck with me because I was stuck on a decision and I just could not make the decision. And I kept bringing it to him. And he was like, I will support whatever decision you make. And I was so stuck. And he finally said to me, he said, I told you, whichever way you go, I will support you. And he goes, but you have to stop bringing me the same problem. Because I understand you have problems, but stop bringing me the same problem. And it just stayed in my head. And I thought, he's absolutely right. You have to get past that stuck point and make those tough decisions. It's really easy to spiral, but
one of a pitfall I often see in retail, and it applies both in oftentimes in assortment planning decisions and also in marketing decisions, is retailers sometimes chase shiny objects without assessing the fit to the business. And the funny thing is, I can sit here and evangelize never making that mistake and then make that mistake this afternoon because it is so difficult not to make. But you look at either cool products or cool marketing vehicles are just so sexy. And you look at them and say, we need to do this. And you get blinded to the complete lack of fit to what your customer expectation is and what your strengths are as a brand. One of my favorite examples was years ago. I was working in marketing for a very large international brand, and it was the day after the Super Bowl. back in the heyday of Super Bowl ads ruling the world at that time. And one of the guys in finance came into my office and said, why can't we do cool things like that, on behalf of our brand? And I said, well, we can. I mean, we're a big enough company that if you wanted to, you could afford to do that. It wouldn't be easy, but you could. And I said, but let's talk about what Super Bowl ads do really well. They create awareness like no other marketing vehicle on the planet. I mean, clearly. I said, would you agree with that? He said, yeah. I mean, all of a sudden, like these internet brands nobody had heard of on Saturday were now household names on Monday. Okay, yes. I said, okay. So our brand, this survey shows us, is one of the best known brands in the world. Okay, in the world, not just in the US, in the world. Everybody knows who we are. A great Super Bowl ad would be fantastic, but it would solve a problem we don't have at great expense. But man, it would be fun and cool to do it. I'm totally bought in on that part. But
Right.
you make those same mistakes with cool products, and you've just invested limited inventory dollars in something that isn't the right fit for your brand, your storefront, your showroom.
Interesting.
Yeah.
But
Makes a
it's
ton of sense.
like I said, I'm going to make that mistake this afternoon, having just got on my soapbox about it. I guarantee I will. So
No, that's a really good call out, and something to help people think about is if you're aware, maybe you can avoid some of those traps for sure.
Yeah.
And a great example. So, Peter, just to continue our conversation with you here for a moment, as someone running a fast-paced retail business, you are no stranger in making high-impact decisions quickly. Can you talk us through how you approach these moments? Is there a framework or process that you rely on?
First of all, I completely agree with the premise of the question. The nature of our business is, I tell friends of mine, one of the downsides of retail is it's like mowing your lawn. You can do the best job you've ever done in your life mowing the lawn on Saturday. You got to do it again the next Saturday. You don't get to skip a week because you did it so well. It's not how it works. So every single week, you are faced with new data and a need to reevaluate and decisions and create new decisions. The way we try to handle that at Boston Interiors well is, first of all, make the decision making inclusive. The entire senior leadership team weighs in because each of them is an expert. Remember, I was talking a few minutes ago about make sure you're making decisions that apply upstream and downstream. Well, have upstream and downstream sitting in the room. And we do that in very structured meetings. Every single Tuesday morning, we have the commerce strategy meeting. Every Wednesday morning, we have the inventory strategy meeting, because that there will need to be decisions made. And there's no point saying, let's see if we can get everybody on the phone, on Teams, as if you didn't know decisions were going to need to be made this week. That's the only constant. Decisions will need to be made, and put yourself in a position to have subject matter experts in a very inclusive process that no one can miss, because they know when it is every single week. I mean, when I say no one can miss, I don't mean that literally, but fast moving, a fast moving environment like the environment all of us work in is an argument for slowing everything down, not speeding everything up. But to slow it down, you have to anticipate that you're going to be ready to move when that time, when 9 o'clock on Tuesday morning clicks. It's time to say, okay, let's do this. So that, I mean, that's the best way I know how to do it.
I'm going to make a note on what you just said. So I'm not on my phone doing anything in the webinar. You just said something brilliant. Say that again.
I'm going to write down the date that somebody just said that.
You said that oftentimes when we're fast paced, we try to make things slow down to make a decision. Right? Did I hear that right?
Well, yeah. Your gut tells you we're in a fast-paced environment. We need to make decisions fast. I'm saying, no, you're in a fast-paced environment. Slow it down. In sports, sometimes they'll say that young player is getting better because the game is slowing down for him.
Right.
It's a common expression, like in football, baseball, etc. That's what I try to do. Let's slow it down.
Love it. I'm not sure as a panelist I'm supposed to be taking notes too, but I thank you for that.
I've been taking notes also.
That's a great nugget right there. I'm stealing that today. So Thank you.
All right. Yeah,
Yeah.
there you go.
I'll give you credit though. I promise.
Sometimes I really firmly believe sometimes you do have to slow down to go faster,
Yes.
which
Yeah.
feels counterintuitive,
It's not
but
intuitive at all, but it's the right way to do it.
yeah.
For sure.
Renee, anything you want to chime in here with?
I have a framework, an actual framework I thought I'd mention just because it's a little non-traditional and it was developed by an individual by the name of Edward de Bono. And you may have heard of it, and many of you on the webinar may have heard of it, but it's called the Six Thinking Hats.
Hmm.
And
Not familiar.
And because it's a framework that is sort of non-traditional, I can see it actually, it's probably represented in that leadership team, Peter, that you just described. But essentially, there's an assessment and everyone takes the assessment and is given a color of a hat based on the results of your assessment. And I happen to be a red hat. Black hat tends to be the person who is asking a lot of questions, playing devil's advocate, looking at worst case scenario. And we all have those tendencies that, kind of at our core. And so the assessment highlights those. What is helpful, I think, about that particular framework is then who, you have some identity to the folks in the room. You know that so-and-so can be counted on to look at worst case scenario, and so-and-so can be counted to look at, what could be really fun and cool and exciting about it. And you want all those voices in the room, in your process.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. And I'm gonna have to go look that one up because that's one that I had not heard of before. I wasn't familiar with that particular one. But any of these kinds of frameworks or tools can be helpful.
Yeah. So I use with a lot of my clients, particularly maybe if you are running fast and you do have to make a quick decision and you don't have all the information, which that's perfect storm for decision making, right? You got to go. It's got to be done today, and I do not have all of the information. And so we just say it's the 4 R's of decision making. And this is basically just, is it reasonable? Is the decision I'm about to make, is it reasonably okay to make this decision, right? It's not, we make candy bars and we're just completely going to making salads, right? Like that's just not even reasonable. Number one, if you're making candy bars, you don't eat salad. So, but that's just not reasonable, right? Is it responsible? Meaning, does it protect, look out for the well-being of not only me and our team, but the entire culture of our company, of our customers and our brand? The third one, is it respectful? Meaning, if I make this decision, does it respect the people that work with me and for me? Does it respect our brand? Does it respect our shareholders or our customer base? And then the last one is just simply, is it resourced? I'm going to make this decision. Do I have the human and fiscal resources to
Yeah.
carry the decision out? And so that's a framework that I use a lot with some high level leaders who have to make quick decisions. It's just those 4 R's. Is it reasonable, responsible, respectful, and is it resourced?
Yep.
Love that.
Excellent.
And pulling
Yeah.
this out, Christian, that you mentioned in your R's, I know if you have a vision, a mission statement, a set of core values, organizational values, I think those are great guideposts in decision making. And I know you had that dovetailed in your 4 R's, calling that
Yeah,
out.
for sure. If you're making decisions that are just in left field from who you are as a company, it can't work out very well. Uh, Regardless of what it is, like you've got to stay in the wheelhouse of who you are and why you are and what you do. Um, and I think Peter said it something like this earlier, and it's one of those things where if you know who your customer base is, don't try to just completely switch at the next shiny thing. You got to stay true to who you are.
Yeah.
At the same time, while you got to press forward. The culture's changing, the socioeconomics are changing, the demographics are changing, and so sometimes you don't have an analyst or a leadership guru or somebody sitting in a boardroom when you're trying to make these decisions. And so just having something to work with is always good, regardless of what the framework is. But if you have something
Yeah.
to work through, it's just better.
They're related to that, and kind of related to the story Beth told a little bit ago, is years ago, Howard Schultz, the longtime leader of Starbucks, in his very first book, when he was like this young rock star business leader back in the day, he told this story that's just stuck with me forever. He was on vacation, and there was a massive storm in South America, and it had a terrible impact on the coffee growing regions of South America. And overnight, the prices of coffee went through the roof, and there was forecasts of no supply being available for months. So he had an emergency meeting of his senior leadership team, and they all got in the room and they read the news, and they all started arguing about what was going to happen. Prices had doubled, and they're going to double again tomorrow, and they'll double the day after that. And the next guy said, doesn't matter if they go up because there isn't going to be any product anyway. And I mean, everybody is just talking crazy, high energy, raised voices in the room, until his CFO, in this sage voice, said, no one here knows what's going to happen and can know. It's unknowable. The only thing we can know is how to predict a set of scenario outcomes. Like, we buy product today at this doubled price. What would the outcome of that be? We wait for the prices to go to maybe come down and they double again, and we have to buy. What would that outcome look like? We lock in product today to make sure we don't run out, or we don't and risk that we can't get more product. He said that then, with those scenarios modeled, we say, which one is the best outcome? We can't know which one will happen.
Mhm.
And I looked at that, I said, and COVID was the best example. We were making decisions around unknowable scenarios all the time. All you can do is say, if we make this decision and it plays out the wrong way, can we live with that? That's the
Mhm.
only thing you can do. That's the only thing you can know. And that story stuck with me forever. It was just the most powerful moment for how to picture the room with everybody just crazy speculating what was going to happen next, bringing the room back down to earth and driving constructive conversation, making the best decision you could. The funny thing about it was the decision they made was buy right now at double the price. It will protect our inventory. It's the best decision we can make. The following week, it was discovered the forecast of impact from the storm was way overblown, and prices dropped back to normal, and there was unlimited supply. But they didn't make a bad decision. They made the
Mhm.
best decision they could with the information they had. So
Right.
it was a fascinating study, like the story you were telling, Beth. What do you do when something you consider to be vital to your decision making is unknowable? It doesn't matter how long you think about it or talk about it. It's not going to
Yeah,
change whether you know it or not. And
Right.
you feel stuck, you know.
yeah. All right. It's an excellent story. And um, I can only imagine what the people in the room went through in that moment, but really love that takeaway of, we might say, oh, hindsight's 2020, and I would do it differently, but just because the outcome went a different direction doesn't mean your decision was a bad
It doesn't.
decision,
Yeah.
which
Right.
is you made the right decision with the information that you had available to you, and that you were able to say, here are the scenarios, here's the different ways this could go. You look at risk. I mean, no, that's a really great point there.
Well, it
So
was a
I'm gonna,
better story because
oh,
they guessed wrong. I mean, they didn't guess. They said we made
right,
this decision.
right.
If we hadn't, we would have had a much better outcome. It was a better story because of that, not worse, I thought.
Yeah, no, that is really true. So this next topic I'm going to dig into, hey, panelists, I'm giving you a warning here. Taking this in 3 different directions. And I'm going to lay it out all 3 for you at the start. And then we can take them one by one or pick and choose. But this is, to me, a really interesting area to figure out, how do you balance intuition or instinct against data? So here's my 3 parts, which is, how do you balance like gut instinct with hard data? Or next scenario, right? What do you do if there's incomplete or conflicting data? Or what if you have no data whatsoever? Right. So
Well,
that's why I'm like, I'm giving you kind of 3 different buckets in
Yeah.
this and let you think about that for a minute. We can kind of tackle it however we want. But to me, we see all those scenarios happen. Right.
when you work in retail, you work in a data-rich environment. I mean, minute to minute, there's more data available, and there's a lot of expertise on aspects of that data, usually within an organization. So, okay, compiling good data, unless you're just lazy, that's an ordinary activity to do. The intuition, I think of it, is, I mean, I spend a lot of time on showroom floors and I talk to rock star salespeople all the time. I want them to tell me what their gut instinct is, because it's a lot better than mine. I mean, they're the closest person to the customer, and they can talk about what the customer experience and what the engagement would look like. And you might look and say, the data tells me this is a good decision, but it'll never translate on the showroom floor. I'm glad I asked you. I mean, that's the kind of intuition because I can't get data from them. They're not going to tell me precisely what their close rate will be, but they can tell me what the customer experience will be. And that's
Mhm.
closer to intuition than data.
Mhm.
Yeah, I don't think it has to be an either or proposition. I think it can be both and. I think here's how I would say it. Gut feeling decisions are often right, but they probably won't be in the long haul. So you're making these decisions probably rarely. Like Peter said, we're in an age of information. You can get any information you want. That's easy to get to. It is data rich, but I think what we lack in our particular cultural setting is wisdom. And so I think in decision making, number one, yeah, you can go with your gut if you've been doing this a while, but we got to be really careful putting rookies in and or even just inexperienced high level leaders that they show lots of potential. And so I would be sure that they have some sort of framework for that. If I'm helping a leader and putting leaders in place in these scenarios, I want them to have these 6 kind of benchmarks that you look at in decision making, or these 4 R's or whatever. I'm sure there's hundreds of them. So I would want them to have something that would help them develop wisdom in their lack of experience. Um, but I would surround myself with people who are data driven. I would be sure that I at least have some facts available, because you got to learn that stuff somehow. So yeah, I trust the gut in a lot of things just because I've seen a lot, done a lot, and that. But if you have an inexperienced decision maker in that can be kind of recipe for disaster. But again, sometimes you need to make bad decisions that will help you be a better decision maker moving forward. And so I think you just try to mediate that as much as you can. But certainly, I agree with Peter. Like, you can give me all the data in the world, but if this just doesn't compute in our setting and in our culture or subculture or in our particular demographic that we serve, it's just not going to work.
Right. Renee, what would you add to that?
Yeah, I agree with both of those takes. Best case scenario, the data backs up your gut feeling, right? But that's not not always the case. One thing I think is a pitfall that we want to be mindful of in our decision making process when utilizing data is making sure that it's objective data, or that our how we're pulling it and accessing it and highlighting it is objective, that we're not just picking and choosing what supports the direction we might want to go for a variety of reasons. And I think it speaks to just a larger cautionary tale of checking our own biases related to decision making,
Mhm.
and particularly to the nuance of the decision. Maybe we really like that rep, so we want to take on their new line, and and that's a bias we're bringing to the decision making process. And so just having an awareness of that, and really ensuring that we can make a logical case for supporting the decision as well. I tend to be highly intuitive that way. I mean, I really do like to operate, but one of the things that gives me peace at night is the research and the data piece that, like I said, in a perfect world, will support that gut instinct or intuition.
And you raised a good point on that difference between instinct and bias.
Mm.
Yeah.
And one tool I use for myself is to check my own biases, is I say it out loud to someone else.
Mm.
I will tell someone, look, I have a bias about this thing in this way that could absolutely influence this decision. And by saying it out loud to someone else, it helps me. That's just something that I do personally. It just helps me to be very aware of it, acknowledge it, and then it almost even creates a little accountability for checking it, because now someone else knows that I'm carrying that into that decision-making process.
Yeah.
Um,
That's
so-
good.
Like that.
There is a science to decision making, right? Like it's not just intuition, it's not just
Yeah.
experience. Are good decision makers born, or are they made? But there are these things that scientifically we look at, and really great decision makers are usually really great at self-awareness. They know I am biased towards this particular rep or this particular company or this particular marketing style. And so just being able to kind of admit that and say that's really critical. I love that.
Yeah.
I can be sold on someone who is a champion of an idea's intuition driven idea. I absolutely can. When someone is trying, first of all, I want them to show me they did everything they could to get data to fill the decision pipeline, and they only filled half the pipe. That's all there is. So they're filling the other. They admit I'm filling the other half of the pipe with my gut. Okay, and here's my idea. The two things once I've decided I'm going to be really receptive to that conversation because they've proven to me they've done that part, then the two things I usually am looking for from there is, do I believe in this person? Are they a passionate enough champion? And I'm guessing there's about 3 roadblocks they haven't even thought of that they're going to hit. And are they the person to try to solve those roadblocks? I'm not trying to figure out whether it's the world's best idea. I'm trying to figure out, is this the right champion? And then, second of all, can we make sure this is tolerable risk? It's a little like the Starbucks story. If they're saying, I need $20,000 to do this, we're like, it's kind of like when you say, when you go to the casino, make sure all the money in your pocket is money you can afford to lose. Yeah, okay. If I won't miss 20 grand, and you've sold me and I think you're the right person, let's do it. I mean, you gotta try something new,
I like it. And I am a huge proponent of data-driven decisions. I frequently be like, show me, let's go look the numbers up, figure it out. But what do you do if you have conflicting data points?
That's a great question. What do you do? I think number one, as you guys were talking through this, I began to think about different channels of data and information. It obviously, if you punch a question into ChatGPT is going to answer you based upon whatever you've put into it before. So it knows you. So it's gonna form whatever it wants to out of your bias, like we just talked about. And so your channels of information have to be objective, obviously, whatever those are in your world, they have to be objective. But I also think they have to be really specific. For example, when I was at the Las Vegas market a couple of weeks ago, my breakout session, we talked about marketing to different generations, but how do you understand what a generation values? And so what data do you have on the buying habits of Gen Z? Well, I mean, I can tell you I have this, and this, and this, but show it to me. Where's that? Who's it coming from? What are your sources? And so, being able to use trusted sources, I think, is important. the question obviously always rolls around, what can we trust? I mean, obviously everything that's online is true, correct? And
Right.
so, and so unless you're like on a satire site, which is pretty much all the World Wide Web at this point. But
Mhm.
so yeah, so trusted data source, yes, but trusted channels. Is it specific? Are we looking at
Yep.
our truly our demographic, not our what we kind of hope or we assume is our demographic, but who is this person and what's the and then research all of that. Don't research just your data point. Research, okay, so are they spending Gen X spends more money on furniture per year right now than any other generation. But why? Why is that? Well, it's because Gen X are taking care of aging parents, which means they're buying furniture for help to help them in their waning years. They're also
Mhm.
still parenting or grandparenting, so they have kids in college that they're buying dorm room furniture for. And I'm a Gen Xer who's a new grandpa, so I'm buying baby
Nice.
furniture, right?
Yep.
So why is Gen X spending more? Okay, I know Gen X is spending more money, but why? Well, it's
Mm.
because they have these different seasons of life that so you see what I'm saying, and you want to get a specific data point, but there's more information to a data point than just the point. And
Yeah.
I would want to know the why. So why are they buying? Why are they not buying? Why are they buying specifically this kind or this type or whatever?
Yeah. Ask the deeper questions, dig in a little more.
Yeah.
Yeah. Makes sense. All right. So we're going to talk a little bit about collaboration now. And how do you involve teams in decision making without slowing down the process? And empower versus not micromanage. And I will say, I have a project management background. So in the project management space, I always tell anyone, if you are running a project, the more people you add into it, the slower it's going to go. That's just, it's like straight up math. You can just literally extend your timeline on how many people are involved in that project. I feel that can happen with decision making, right? So how do we be collaborative without slowing it down, but still get to effective decisions?
I really liked this question, Beth, and we'll see if my thoughts align with any of your project management background, because it's certainly not my area of expertise. But I think that cultural foundation that we talked about early on in our discussion today is really critical. An environment where people feel psychologically safe, or they know their ideas will be perhaps not necessarily acted upon, but it will be heard and listened to and valued,
Mhm.
so that they're comfortable in that space. And then those diverse perspectives are so important. But in terms of creating a collaborative process that is efficient and gets the decision made in the time frame it needs to be made, I think we have to start by setting expectations. This is how much time we have. This is what we're going to talk about. This is what we need to
Mhm.
have resolution on toward the end of our time together or at a certain deadline. And then also setting the expectation that we do value your input, but we are not necessarily making a promise that your idea or your direction will be the one that is moved forward. We want to hear it all, we value it all, but ultimately, maybe it does end up being a very collaborative solution, but there is a possibility that that some of it is an exercise, and there's value to that as well.
Mhm.
Yeah. Um, One way to make sure the decision-making process doesn't get slowed down is separate everybody's understanding of the role of collaboration and consensus.
Mm.
I mean,
That's good.
almost if a decision affects your area, you always want the opportunity to share your thoughts to the team to make sure they're not missing important information. Um, the decision-making process doesn't then become a democratic vote or even worse, a unanimous necessity for the decision to move forward. So um, everybody who has relevant information to share can share it in a high quality fashion. And then this group of decision makers will make the decision. And
Mm.
that way you get the best participation without the slowdown in the decision making.
Yeah, that's good.
Mm.
I and I here's what I would say. I would say building a collaborative team for decision making happens way before the decision has to be made, right? Like as a leader, one, I think as the decision maker, I always want to be clear to whoever I'm collaborating with that I'm the one who ultimately takes the hit or gets the glory for this decision, how it works out. So I'm the one they're going to come to. But I love and respect my teammates enough. I need your help with this. And so that's always built before. That's built with empathy. That's built with, communication, whether it's grabbing a coffee or standing around the water cooler. That's built way before that for a leader. And so I would just say be authentic, lead with empathy outside the decision making room, and you're going to be best set up for when you get in the room. When you don't take someone's idea, they're not going to be like upset with you because they know you and you know them. And I know that's hard to do. Again, we're talking about decisions. Sometimes decisions come in a moment where we can't. But
Yeah.
if you just build these cultural habits into your leadership and into your life as a leader, you are going to win the room before you're in the room. And I think that's the key to being collaborative, but at the same time, protecting you as the ultimate decision maker if that's your particular role.
Yeah, I agree with you, Christian. And one of the things we say at Boston Interiors is in this very collaborative process, the one rule we make for ourselves is when we open the conference room door and walk out to the rest of the organization, everyone walks out and talks about the decision as if it was their idea.
Mm-hmm.
Because everybody has to get committed to making that decision win, even
Right.
if they lost in the conference room, because we trust the process. So you say, okay, I don't think we should be doing it this way, but the group does. And so I'm going to walk out and evangelize this decision. And that's the expectation. And that's hard to do. But if you have a really healthy culture, people just do it automatically. They really
Right.
do.
Right.
Powerful.
Yeah, absolutely. And this theme of making decisions involving other people has actually come up throughout our conversation this whole time, which is interesting. We're definitely saying like, don't make decisions in isolation, right?
Mm-hmm.
You bring in other voices, other data points, other people's instinct, other people's, but setting those clear expectations around what their involvement is in that decision-making process. Yeah, makes a lot of sense. It's great. So now decision-making all day is exhausting. It's tiring. Yeah, and there's a certain resilience you need, not only just to keep making those decisions and make the right decisions, because it can wear you down over time, but also just in crisis moments, it can be really challenging to have the resilience to keep going and be that stress dampener and to not get in the frenzy state when there is a crisis going on. So my question is, how can leaders build their own resilience and fortify themselves, and build that confidence too in making those good decisions during that crisis moment or times of uncertainty?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think this is a great question. One of the things I say often to members of my team who lead, say, a functional area is leadership is lonely. When you go through a difficult time and you've spent so much of your own energy running around and boosting your team, saying, look, we just had a tough 3-day weekend, sales were terrible, you're all exhausted, and yet the results were terrible. How do you manage that? And you've put every ounce of your energy into getting them back on track and in the right mental state and feeling appreciated. And then you get in the car and you say, who does that for me?
Mm-hmm.
And the answer is you. You do that for you. But that's why I love this question is it's real. It's very, very real. I mean, you can't help feeling that who's there for me every so often when you need it. You've got to have
Mm-hmm.
devices that help you get yourself back on track and in the right state to be your best self the next day at 8 in the morning. And
Yeah.
and I'm not going to pretend that's easy. That's really hard.
Yeah. That's good.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I often with some of my coaching clients, I often say this, that you can't give what you don't have.
Mm,
And, whatever's in your well, that's what the bucket's going to draw up. And so, again, sort of like the collaboration, your resilience and decision fatigue, that's what we have now is decision fatigue. The way that you combat that was 2 weeks ago or 2 months ago or 2 years ago. When it's there, it's there. And that's why I say all the time, and this is not a self-serving, every high level leader and decision maker needs a coach. You need
mm,
something, whether it's a professional coach person, whether it's a colleague that maybe works in a different setting than you, but kind of has the same pressures that you can, you know, grab lunch with or whatever, and kind of bounce this stuff off of you. That's why, rest is important. I I can't stress enough how many people, high level, very successful CEOs and CFOs that I meet with that are just burnt out. Like they are toast. They are done. And it's because they didn't take care of themselves. They didn't spend the time on this word is self-care, right? Like that word kind of gets a bad
right.
rap,
Yeah, but
but it's true. Like you can't give what you
yep.
don't have. And so, but in building resilience, again, you need people. It's a common theme. You need people, you need information, right? But you need a specific kind of person. If you're going to build resilience, you need someone who's going to push you, but empathize with you, who's going to challenge you, but really kind of like forgive you for failing, because that's what's going to happen. And,
Mm,
one of the things that I work with younger generations is resilience. That's the one kind of hotbed topic I hear about Gen Z, especially. Like they're just not very resilient. They haven't had to be. Like
mm,
we've made them very successful very easily, and they haven't had to overcome a lot. And so in the workforce, whether you're retail side or whether you're manufacturing side or whether you're transportation side, the people that you're hiring, you need to understand who they are and what they need from you. And building resilience is a daily task for some people. Some people are naturally resilient. They just are, like they've just lived a life that makes them resilient, but many have not. And so putting
mhm,
them in safe scenarios to fail, that builds resilience. Having very authentic, open questions and answer kind of conversations with them, that builds resilience in them. But again, if you don't have it, it's kind of hard to give it to somebody else. So it's
right.
it's it's for the leader to be working on every day too.
Absolutely.
I
Renee, what would you add?
Yeah, I echo a lot of what Christian you had to say. I think as leaders and decision makers, we have to be intentional of our own emotional and physical wellness in whatever shape and aspect that takes. We do have to build a support system internally, externally, online, whatever that looks like. A piece of that support system that you touched on that I think is really important is that challenge network piece, right? And not
Mhm.
just surrounding yourself with people that are going to tell you how great and brilliant you are all the time, but they're going to challenge you when it's called for and warranted, and most likely you'll do that for them as well. The last piece that I thought might be worth adding is in terms of resilience is just having sort of a, whether it's an actual or just a mental checklist of your wins. You've survived 100% of
Mm,
your first day, right? You
Mm.
have weathered the storms, you have made the bad decisions and come out okay on the other side, but you've also
Yeah.
made some really great decisions and had a lot of successes. And so to kind of build that confidence and resilience back up after, especially an extended period that was particularly difficult, reflecting on some of those successes can be really beneficial.
I
Mm.
like that a lot. It can be easy sometimes to focus on the failures instead of remembering there was still a lot of good in there that happened and
Yeah.
recognizing that as well. Um, and the takeaway here for me too is decision making is exhausting. You do have to take care of yourself and to just
Yeah.
recognize the fact that it takes energy away from you to do that. And if you're sitting
Yeah.
there going, why am I so tired at the end of the day? Because that is a very real thing. And we need to take
Yeah,
care of ourselves.
Yeah, I've over the course of my career, I've watched a lot of people who years ago were, say, we're all kind of at a similar level, kind of beginning management careers, kind of, and so on. The plateau, everyone hits a plateau at some point, and the pyramid keeps getting narrower, of course. But what stops a lot of people's progress isn't lack of talent or lack of intelligence or lack of drive. It's an inability to handle the pressure at the next level. They just look
Hmm.
at it and say, that's not for me. And that's okay. I mean, it isn't for everybody, but I think it's unacknowledged that that aspect of your ability to continue to grow if you want to, some people don't, um,
Mm.
is as much dependent on that as it is your innate talent, your innate smarts and your innate drive. It
Mhm.
absolutely is.
Hmm.
Yeah, that's
That's good.
great. Uh, this has been just fabulous conversation. Really appreciate everyone's time here. Thank you, Christian, Peter, Renee, for your insights, actionable advice, your candor with us today. I would love to end with a quick takeaway from each of you, a practical piece of advice for making better decisions under pressure. What would you share as one quick takeaway for our audience? And I will call on you to just go around. And I will start with Renee.
All right, thank you. I would
Mhm.
say first and foremost, be intentional about developing that healthy a culture that supports healthy decision making. Put some structures and processes in place. Peter mentioned that they have a group of senior leaders that meet to make important decisions. Whatever your process and structure looks like, but have that in place so it's not just this crazy, unexpected, what do we do now situation when decisions are needing to be made. And lastly, the support system, having that in place as well.
Mm.
Yep, that's excellent. Christian?
Yeah. So the greatest college football coach of all time, Nick Saban, said that success is not a destination, it's a continuum, meaning you don't arrive at success. Your tomorrow is based on what you're going to do today, kind of thing. And one of the things that I try to stress is don't aim for perfect. Like let's look at the process. Let's take it one little bite at a time. And the way we say that is we want to help all people be 1% better each day. And if you can get 1% better in your decision making this year, you're going to be a great decision maker in 2026. And so look at the progress you're making, look at the process you're taking. Don't look at the end result.
Awesome. Yeah, love that. Peter, what have you got?
Well, I mean, this has been just a fascinating group of people talking about this topic, and the ideas, thoughts, and drivers of good decision making have just been so abundant and impressive to me. The one thing I would add at the end of it is the one thing that can undo all of the wonderful things we've talked about is toxic behavior in the decision making group, and you
Mhm.
have to have zero tolerance for that.
Yeah.
I mean, and toxic is an overused word, but let me just give you an easy example. Years ago, I was part of a senior leadership team and I was representing the marketing side. Anytime the head of sales didn't like the idea, the immediate reaction was, you're putting hundreds of millions of dollars at risk with that decision. You know, and that was just a tool to shut down the
Hmm.
work of the group. It was a toxic behavior. So if as a leader or a peer colleague, you can't tolerate toxic behavior because it'll unwind all the good ideas we had about how to make great decisions. You're only as good as your weakest link, to be a terrible cliche.
Yeah, no, it's true.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Couple of the notes I had from this conversation too, anticipate, culture over commission, and culture, we talked, Renee hit on that again too. Failure isn't final, self-awareness, self-care, I mean, there's so many different takeaways that I'm getting out of this. You guys, thank you so much. I just want to Also, thanks Synchrony again for sponsoring these webinars. And to everyone who joined us today, we hope that you are leaving with practical tools and a renewed sense of confidence in your own decision-making under pressure. Before you go, please don't forget to complete the post-webinar survey. You will receive a link shortly to that. If you'd like to revisit any part of today's discussion, the recording will be available soon online. Our next webinar is Thursday, August 28th. It is titled, "Is your top performer really leadership material?" That'll be a fun one. All right, until then, thanks for tuning in and trusting HFA to support your success.
Thank you.
Thank you.